I'm Jana.
And I'm Carol.
And this is the Real Talk Recreation Therapy Podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about real experiences and real research that back up the use of recreation therapy as a method of treatment for a variety of populations.
We try to keep it real as we address concerns and successes that we and other recreation therapists have had as we all navigate this awesome career field.
We don't have it all figured out, but one thing we know for sure is everything is a lot easier when you can talk it out with a friend. Hello, everyone. Today we are interviewing an organization that is near and dear to our hearts, AccesSurf. So when Jana and I were living and working as recreational therapists in Hawaii, we both had the opportunity to work with this awesome organization. So I'm just going to read a brief bio about the organization that we're going to be interviewing today. AccesSurf is a Hawaii-based nonprofit that provides beach access and adaptive water sports programs for anyone with a disability. Since 2006, AccesSurf has grown from one program, Day at the Beach, to providing over 50 program days annually over 6 activity programs, which include adaptive surfing, swimming, paddling, and outrigger canoe paddling. AccesSurf focuses on inclusion, accessibility, awareness, and community.
And we're super excited to interview these guys for a couple of reasons. One, if any of you are in Hawaii and you haven't heard about them yet, add these people to your list of community resources available to your clients. And if you're not in Hawaii, don't stop listening, because these guys they're an incredible nonprofit organization. They have done things nationally and internationally. I actually first met them not in Hawaii. I met them during my internship in San Diego. The city of San Diego was helping to host the 4th International Surfing Competition. And I met AccesSurf out there because they had a huge presence at this international competition. So if you are interested in adaptive sports or surfing or anything like that, or even just nonprofit activities in general, this is a huge, an amazing resource, and they have a lot of expertise to offer in the way of management and marketing for those types of programs. So welcome, Cara. We're so excited to have you with us today. Just to start, why don't you give us a brief bio about yourself and how you got involved in AccesSurf?
Well, obviously, thank you both for having me and AccesSurf on your wonderful podcast and for doing this podcast. I think it's really great. I love learning about it, and I can't wait to listen to more. But so I am the executive director of AccesSurf, and I actually started in 2008 or 2009 as a volunteer. And it was one of those things. I saw a poster and it looked amazing. And I have a few people in my family back in Canada who have disabilities, and I'd never seen anything like this before. And they don't have programs like this where I'm from, So we went to my first day at the beach, and that's one of those stories. It changed my life completely. And I got hooked right away as a volunteer. And then over the years, I got more and more involved, came on as staff, and then eventually into the role of executive director. So back then it was a fancy title for I was the only staff, but now we actually have grown quite a bit. So we can talk about that a little bit later about the growth of AccesSurf, but it's been a fun journey to be part of it throughout all of these years as it's grown.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that you started out just volunteering, what is this? Because the first time I found out about AccesSurf, I had just moved to Hawaii, and I was looking for things to do to just kind of get more involved in adaptive sports. And I went out to a day at the beach, and everyone was so welcoming. There's such a fun energy at all of their events where it's just, you want to be involved in the organization because it's just so cool to see the impact that they're making. So that's super cool.
That's what I always say to people. It's the most fun to volunteer because it's once a month, you're at the beach and everyone's having a lot of fun. So why wouldn't you want to come out, right?
Oh, absolutely. So just to start it off, can you just tell us about how AccesSurf got started?
Yeah, well, AccesSurf started in 2006. And, from the humble beginnings of Mark Marble as one of our co-founders is a certified recreational therapist. And he had worked a few different places in Hawaii, but I think at that time he was at Shriners Hospital. And, he had really noticed and talked with his patients that people were not going to the beach and they were not going to the ocean post-injury or whatever the situation was. And so he started looking at that and realizing, one of the reasons is there wasn't access. There wasn't an opportunity, either, physical like physical barriers or also like the physical support that some people might need. So he ended up working with Rich Julian, who is an adaptive athlete here in Hawaii, and a whole team of people actually from the Rehab of the Pacific. So a couple of doctors and therapists and so on and so forth, and experienced water people. And they, over however many months, I'm sure it was quite a process planning it. And then the first day at the beach was in November of that year of 2006. And from what I wasn't at that first one, but from what I hear, it was 5 or 6 people and some volunteers, and it was amazing. And to watch it, to see what has become of those days, now our day at the beach, we have one tomorrow, we'll probably have 250 people. And that's our usual every month, for that one program. So it basically started out of the fact that there was a need basically here in Hawaii. And one of the things, like I said, the people who Mark and Rich were talking to, they weren't going to the beach because they didn't have the access, and they didn't want to ask, not everyone, but a lot of people didn't want to ask their friends and family for that support. So there was just something that needed to be built here with the community to provide a service.
That is so cool. I love that it was like realizing like we're in Hawaii and no one is going to the that is a big thing. And so it's really cool that they were like, we could provide this need. Like there is a place here for you.
Exactly. And at that time there were not many things like that anywhere, with specifically around adaptive water sports. There was a couple of organizations doing a few things on the mainland, but it was very groundbreaking, I guess, in that sense. I mean, we talk about how AccesSurf is the pioneers in many different ways. And I think kudos to all of those who started it, because it was something that was not common. Now it's common all over the world, which is wonderful. But back then it really wasn't. Well, anyway, sorry, I could go on forever, but the stories about how the lifeguards at first were super nervous, and all the barriers that they had to work through, to make sure that people had access. It's a pretty impressive story.
Yeah. And it's so real, because I know that there are people all over the country, all over the world, that are trying to do things like this and are probably in the midst of the barriers right now. Right. And they're not seeing like 250. So this is really cool that we get to go back in time and be like, we started there. Keep going. This is okay.
Exactly. And it's possible. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about adaptive surf, but also like other programs that you do. So can you describe to us some of the various programs that you currently offer through AccesSurf?
Yeah, we do. So our standards is the Day at the Beach, which we just spoke about. It's our signature program. It's a community program that's every month. It's open to anyone with any disability, and it's usually focused around surfing. There are a few events throughout the year that will be a flat water experience. So for example, in August, we'll be partnering with city and county and going to the northeast side of the island and doing some adaptive canoe, paddleboarding, and swimming. So that's just a sort of a special one-off day. But some of the other sports that we focus on, we have smaller clinics. So our Day at the Beach and our Wounded Warrior Day at the Beach are sort of our main bigger program days. And then branched out of those are these smaller clinics that we run quarterly, one a month. So there's swimming. So we'll work at the local pools and we'll do these smaller adaptive swimming programs. And these are all those clinics, these clinics that I'm talking about, they're geared intentionally to be smaller. So a Day at the Beach, Wounded Warrior, that's great, but really it's more of an experience. It's an introduction. It's a fun community day. But for an individual who would like to get more comfortable in the water and learn more skills and techniques, we don't have the capacity so much of those bigger program days. So that's why these clinics were started, to really work with an individual with where they're at and what their needs would be. And some, it might be, getting comfortable putting their face in the water, and working with that. And then others, working with stroke and the different techniques with their swimming style. And then some want to be competitive. And I know you want to talk about that as well. So, just kind of those different levels. So there's swimming. And then we do these smaller surf clinics. So based out of those program days, we'll work with really small groups at a surf clinic where we'll try the different styles of surfing with the different equipment, because there's multiple different styles of adaptive surfing, and give people a chance to try different boards and different equipment. And then we also do an outrigger canoe program with a couple local canoe clubs. And that's just a blast and a lot of fun into itself. And then just naturally, or without even so much of a plan, we've also really launched into some flat water paddling as well. And that has been a variety between some stand up, some kneel, and some prone paddling. And actually, just a little side note, where some of that came from was during when everything was shut down with the pandemic, and we couldn't run our regular programs. We started what we call Access Buddy, where we would just pair up an individual with a volunteer, and they would meet somewhere on the island. And interestingly enough, one of the main things that a lot of people wanted to do was paddle, like just be on the water paddling. So now we're really kind of starting a flat water program. So it's kind of all of it.
Oh, that's so cool. And it's so fun how it's like we started doing this and then it got connected to this and then it got connected
Yes.
to very cool to see.
Well, I can just keep on going on for, that's the interesting thing for anyone that's listening that is looking at programs like this, knowing also your organization or your individual boundaries, because my goodness, we could be doing, like, we've got these other special events that we're always doing as well. But we really, for AccesSurf, we want to focus on what we are doing and do it really well and provide as much of, not as much, but provide a very quality experiences for people. But anyway, there's lots of opportunity to do lots of other things.
Yeah, that's so cool. So you talked about like there's different board or like there's different ways, right? So who are your participants? Because I know a lot of people, when they think of surfing, maybe they're limiting it in their head. So break that down for us and tell us.
Yes, and you're absolutely correct. And we hear that, consistently at programs or with phone calls and emails from people reaching out to us. So when we say our programs are open to anyone with a disability, we mean that. I mean, we serve anyone with a physical disability, cognitive, psychosocial. I mean, it's all across the board. And that is something that is very unique. I think it's, not often that you can find an adaptive sports program that can accommodate. And I think part of the key for us is because we can run year round. We do live in Hawaii, so we're able to run year round, so we can be really open and very, very inclusive. So we work, and when people ask us, for example, with a physical disability, like obviously we get a lot of phone calls with people describing their situation and their function and mobility and concerns. And I have yet to see someone come to a program that we haven't been able to get on the water. Sometimes it might take us an hour, to really work with an individual and figure out the right equipment, the right support. And that support can also be like a padding or whatever the actual physical support is, but then also what does the water support look like as well. So if somebody's coming to our programs for the first time, we usually will tandem surf with them, meaning that we'll have an experienced volunteer on the surfboard with them. And then depending on the individual and what their wants and needs are, we can grow from there to see if they want to be independent, and then we can look at different forms of equipment for them. And any age, that's the other thing I really always like let people know. Everyone come, it doesn't matter. We've literally little 3-year-olds to 95-year-olds, you name it. Everyone can be surfing.
Yeah, I love that so much about how inclusive you guys are, because when Jana and I were working for the Soldier Recovery Unit, we would have soldiers that were like, well, I can't go out to AccesSurf. I've never surfed before. No, you can come. They will teach you. And I was like, if you've ever had any interest in trying the sport of surfing, these are the people that you should go to try this out. So kind of speaking off of that topic, you work with people who go from having zero surf experience at all to some of them go on to compete in surf competitions. So what is that process like? Like, how do you get people to go from just getting on the board to eventually like competing at national surfing competitions?
Well, it's kind of like what I was based on some of what I was just speaking of. I think again, the fact that we're fortunate that we can run so many programs. So basically, I mean, this isn't for everybody, but this is for often people, the journey, they will, find out about Day at the Beach or Wounded Warrior, but often it's Day at the Beach, and they'll come and they'll experience it. They'll meet the community, and they'll work with our team and get on the water, and of course have a life-changing experience because it's the most amazing thing ever. And but so way I like to describe it's like Day at the Beach is a good intro. It's a good experience. It's an ocean experience. And if somebody's like, hey, I want to really get into this, couple things that'll happen is either they'll just continuously come to those community days and get more comfortable and get more involved. but really a big part of it is meeting each other. Like everyone that come to those programs, meeting each other, whether it's experienced adaptive surfers or volunteers or staff, surfers and non-surfers even, because there's more to surfing than just the surfing, and that's a whole other thing. Part of it's the accessibility side of things, and learning the independence and those things. So it's meeting the other people in the programs and talking story, and then more often than not, the little subgroup, that they'll create a friendship and they'll meet up on their own, or people will come to our clinics and the different things that we're doing throughout the year. And then at that time, that's when they can, let's say surfing, try different equipment. Like I had said, like let's say somebody would be a sit surfer, which is called a wave ski. Well, the wave skis that we have at our day at the beach, that's a good introduction, but you're not going to be competing with that. So that's when you would meet up with other surfers and go surfing, and often that will be like little mini AccesSurf groups. And that's not even an organized program. That's just, hey, we're going surfing, who wants to go? And everyone meets up. I also think that's the culture of surfing in general.
Yeah.
Part of it's, AccesSurf and adaptive sports itself, but really the culture of surfing is I feel like it's a very welcoming and inclusive in that sense. And everyone, once you get talking about surfing, that's all you want to do is surf. So, but then you're going to meet up with people. So I know it's a long-winded way to answer that question. So basically building friendships, mentors, and then of course, any kind of program opportunity that AccesSurf would provide. And then the next level is locally. We have our local surfing federation that's called Hawaiian Surfing Association, HSA. Used to be called HASA, but anyway, HSA. And they have competitions throughout the year. There's on our island, on Oahu and on Maui, and I also believe on Kauai, they do surfing contests throughout the year. And in 2014, they started to include adaptive divisions, which is what started what we call our adaptive surf team. And that group of people, they'll compete at the local competitions. And then, we provide some support for that. And then they'll get together and train. And some people will get their own coach or, work together in groups. And then every year, where Jana, you had met us at the ISA World Championships, people will then get to, if they want, then they try to make it to the World Championship team. And then we have our own international adaptive surf competition that AccesSurf hosts, which is part of a world tour now. And that's a whole other story. But anyway, that was a very long answer. Sorry.
No, it's great to hear about like all the different facets of getting people to compete and the community aspect of just surfing and adaptive surfing.
Yep.
So do you guys do any coaching of those athletes if people want to go to a more competitive level? Do you do any of the coaching, or is it more they get connected with coaches through the organization?
With surfing specifically, we have worked with a few different coaches, but we don't have an official coach, but we have a few people that we know that do coaching, and depending on where the person lives or their schedule or their style of surfing, we'll try to pair them up. But that's kind of cool too, because it's a one-off. We might make the introduction, but then they'll go on that path. With swimming, our swim clinics, we actually do have some designated swim coaches that are dedicated to that swim program that can work with people in that level. That's something that we do have a little more organized.
Oh, that's really cool. I think it's really cool how it's a community program that can then connect people to the competition level, because I think that's a big thing that starts to become a question, right? For adaptive sports players is like, okay, like I'm really enjoying this. Like, what's the next level? Like, is there a next level? Can I compete? And the answer is yes. Here, find these resources. So that's
well, and now it's huge. I mean, competitive adaptive surfing is gone next level. Like as you've seen, Jana, the ISA, well, it's called parasurfing through them now. But there's a very, very good chance we'll get into the Paralympics in 2028. That's a whole thing into itself. And then what we hear locally with our Hawaii Adaptive Surfing Championships is we are now part of a professional world tour, which is sort of similar to the WSL. So it's alongside. So there's a lot of opportunity and like you had said, like a lot of people prior to an injury or what have you, they're athletes, they're natural athletes. And this gives them an opportunity to not only enjoy a sport, but be a competitor once again.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And any adaptive sport, there's different categories of competition, right? And different, so that people with similar impairments are working with, competing at like a level that's good for them. So can you explain kind of those different categories? Like, I know there's visual impairment, prone, that kind of thing, like kind of help the people understand, like, how does that, like, how do those like categories work? And then in that, how is that different than like a regular surfing competition, I guess, or similar?
Right. So, and this is going to be an interesting thing as this, well, it's been an interesting growth, watching it grow, the competitive adaptive surfing, because when we first started doing competitions, I mean, everybody was all in the same heat. You know, you'd have the deaf surfers with the visually impaired surfer with a prone surfer, you know, it was like just, you know, more expression session style. But as the sport has grown and there are more competitors, we have been able to break it up a little more refinedly. So basically, I think the best way to describe it is the first category is based on style of surfing, meaning, you know, a stand surfer, a prone surfer, so laying down, obviously, and then a sitting surfer, which is a good way to describe it. So, and within those divisions, there's a bit more of a breakdown. Like you said, visually impaired is one, and majority of the visually impaired surfers that I've seen, they're stand surfers, but that's actually something to think about one day. That may change. And then also with one thing I do want to mention with the prone surfing, we have what we call unassisted and assisted. So within the prone surfing division, there is a separate division that is assisted, meaning the individuals who are the surfer, the competitors, they need assistance getting out to the break, but once and to catch the wave, the wave. But once they're on the wave, they're independent. So they have a team of a pusher and a catcher, and so they're like a unit, and that's how they'll catch the wave. But while they're on the wave, they're independent. So then within those subdivisions, or so those main divisions, it can be broken down more so in the stand, like upper limb and lower limb. And it gets a little more refined, and we're still figuring out some of those details and how far that goes, because now, for example, at our last competition we had 18 divisions, because we had the 9 or the 8 divisions, and then there's men and women on each. So you want it to be very inclusive and you want it to be very competitive. So then therefore you really want it to be as fair as possible for division, but also it gets to the point where I don't know how many more you get.
Yeah. I mean, I think that speaks to like how inclusive these adaptive sports can become, that they're able to compete with all these different divisions that before, like, okay, you don't quite fit into this box, let's make another box. And I also just love hearing about how much adaptive surfing has evolved. I mean, you said you started in 2006 with not that many people, and now you're competing on the national level. Like, that's crazy. That wasn't that long ago.
I mean, the competition we just held in Waikiki, the AccesSurf just hosted in Waikiki, we had 100 surfers from 17 countries.
Wow.
Like, that's just the competitors. I mean, the event itself, I think, was 800 people, like the people that came, you know, it just blows our minds.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I wanted to know, like, for developmental disabilities, are there surfing competitions? Like, is there kind of like the Special Olympics of surfing, or
I hope that there is, but we have not had the capacity to expand that, and we definitely talk about that a lot, and that's something that we definitely want to do. And I don't know when and how that will play into the established world championships and so on and so forth, but there's definitely a huge space for that and a huge need for that, and we're hoping to be able to either be part of that solution or provide that solution. And our team, when we talk about, so AccesSurf, even though we're doing quite a bit, we're still quite small. So looking at how do we grow what we're doing and our program strategically and sustainably. So that is one of the things actually that's really high on our conversation plate, let's say.
So to kind of shift the conversation away from the actual activity of adaptive surfing and more over to like the nonprofit side, Can you just tell us a little bit about the team that you work with at AccesSurf? How do you work together? How do you divide responsibilities? Like, how does that function?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for our organization, we're heavily volunteer based, and we do have a small staff, and I will describe that. But the big backbone of our organization are our volunteer groups. So not only the day of, the group, the troops on the ground as such, but the behind the scenes, and I call them they're very high level volunteerism. So that's our board of directors. And our board of directors is essentially it oversees the organization from a business perspective and a governance perspective, and making sure that we're staying aligned with our mission and, running things properly as such. And then a branch off from the board of directors is what we call our leadership committee. And that's 13 or 15 person group of people that they basically are the core that oversees our operations and our actual program. So within that group of people, they're the ones that are looking at programs and events and analyzing and debriefing and safety procedures and all those different things. And then they're the lead people that you'll see at a program day that will be overseeing the different areas, because there's so many pieces to the puzzle. And then they all work in line with our staff. So we have a staff at the moment, I should know the answer right offhand. I think it's 6. So myself as the executive director, and then we're really excited. It's a new position that we brought on last year, and it's now grown into a full-time position. We actually do have an operations director now. And so that's been an exciting development for me, because now I can shift to being the executive director, less hands-on with the programs. Because as a small group, we all wear lots of hats, there's no doubt about it. But, I was very involved with programs, even though we still have program staff. So our operations director, we're bringing on a new director. Her name is Angie, and she's a longtime AccesSurf volunteer. So I'm very excited. But anyway, she'll be the overseer of the staff and those volunteers that I just described and the operations. So she'll make sure that the programs are running. And then we have a program admin, communications, and they work together as all the emails and the social media and the registration and the different communications that have to happen, because we're communicating with hundreds of people all the time, between the participants, their families, the volunteers, and even the donors, all those different stakeholders as such. And then we also have Ann Yoshida on our team, and she's an accomplished adaptive athlete herself, but she is occupational therapist, and she's helped us develop our training and what that looks like. And that's a whole beast into itself, of course. And then we have a grant writer that helps us write grants. So that's kind of our team. And we all have our little zones, but we very much work together. So we meet weekly and kind of divide and conquer based on the different areas that is our skill set, but also sometimes it's just timing. Like yesterday I was out at storage. You just never know. It's like you just have to be willing when you're a small nonprofit, or I think even a big nonprofit, I don't know. I think you just have to know that you're going to be doing lots of different things at any given day.
That's really good for people to hear. I think if they're feeling like, wow, this is a lot, like, it's okay. like it is a lot, but also
it is a lot.
It's the passion of the people that it's really cool to see that come through, that you obviously are like, I love this and I will be at storage because I love this.
Yes. I don't love storage, but I love what it provides.
So you talked a little bit about grant writing. I know this is a big thing for communities, for nonprofits. How do you get funding for your program? How are you able to get the boards and do the program?
Yeah. Well, that's obviously one of the biggest struggles, for any organization. But it's one of the biggest struggles, but it's also one of the most amazing parts of it as well, to see the level of support. So for us, of course, individual donations, personal donations is a very big piece of the puzzle for us. And how we get those is really just individuals that have experienced our programs and they want to help support, or if we're doing a fundraising campaign specifically or a fundraising event, that's how we would connect with an individual donor. And many different ways, I guess, in that sense. And then we certainly work with grants. We have a few grants that we have. if I'm not quite sure exactly who your audience is with your wonderful podcast, but one thing to think about with grants, there's a lot of amazing opportunities out there, but it does come with a lot of work. So you do have to make sure that you have the resources to write the grant and also facilitate the grant. So that was something that we've learned over the years. So we work with some smaller, like local foundations, but now we are working on bigger, well, to us, bigger grants, with our city and county and state level. So that's kind of new waters for us, but we have a wonderful grant writer, and she also helps us do our program evaluation. So we're very fortunate. And then corporations and businesses, so there's sponsorships specifically like for an event like our competition. And then there's just general support. And we really, in Hawaii, I forget what it is, but I think 10,000 nonprofits or something. It's a lot. There's a lot of nonprofits here, but I'm still amazed how supportive the local businesses are to want to give back, whether it's financially or if it's in kind, meaning, donate food or whatever it might be, because there's a lot of needs. It's not only just the obvious with the equipment and staff and those kinds of overheads, but there's, volunteer food and gas for the truck or whatever it might be. It's like all these things.
Yeah.
The Home Depot runs that we do constantly, lots of duct tape.
Yeah, that's got to be really encouraging to be able to see like how your community in Hawaii is supporting this nonprofit by like providing you with the things you need to be able to do all the amazing things you do. So really Jana and I have both volunteered with your organization, and you, like you said, you have a huge volunteer base. How do you get people to come volunteer with you? Like, how do you find those people to help?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, it's
yeah.
Well, I do know. We have certainly grown over the years. Now, many, many years ago, when we started with social media, that was a game changer. We certainly noticed, when we started having more of a presence on social media, we definitely noticed an influx of volunteers. But really, a lot of it's very grassroots. And we look forward to getting back to doing more of this because, of course, we hadn't been able to for the last few years during the pandemic and such. But we do a lot of speaking engagements. We'll go to special events. We'll do expos. We'll put posters up in surf shops. Because the thing about volunteering for us is it's all, when people are asking me, who's your target market for volunteers? I say everybody. And I mean that. Like, yes, we need experienced water people, but we need people on the land. We need people to help with equipment, with food, with talking story, like just being there, setting up. So what we've noticed here on Oahu, a lot of the military groups have been extremely generous. So we tried to make sure we keep in touch with the different groups that are on the island. And I think a lot of it comes through speaking engagements, but then really, honestly, it's word of mouth. I think that's one of our best calling cards as such, consistently when I ask new volunteers, how did you hear about us?
Yeah.
I would bet 95% of the time the answer is, well, Carol told me about it, or something. It's like you go and you have that experience and then you want to share it.
That's really cool. I know like volunteer management, it can be like a really tricky thing because people aren't getting paid, but you really need them. And so how do you, I guess they obviously see that it's wonderful. And then getting them to stay, was that ever a struggle, or is that just kind of you tell us what you want to do and we'll like have you help in that area? Like, I guess, how do you manage the volunteers once they come? And
that is something that we've developed over the years, and we're still, adjusting and tweaking consistently. And I've noticed quite a change over the years, how we do that and what we're doing. So currently, the quick, snapshot is, you find out about AccesSurf, you go online, you give us your, fill out a form, and then you do, we have a virtual training once a month that gives a kind of overview of the organization and then we also have an online manual, and that goes through different areas where we need volunteers. So most people have a kind of an idea of sort of what area they want to be in, whether it's just like water or land, but a lot don't. And that's fine, because I didn't know. First time I went, I had no idea. I was like, that just looks fun. I'm going to go. Oh, I don't know what that means, So what we have, and we're very fortunate, we have some really amazing key lead volunteers that oversee each of the areas. And when I talk about the different areas, there's like the swimming, the surfing, transfers, food, equipment, and so on, and all kinds. And in each of those areas, we've got a lead volunteer, a key lead volunteer, and then these leader volunteers. And then we also have a few coordinators that are there on site, meaning if you come to a day at the beach, for an example, and you're like, hey, I did the training, but I still don't know what I want to do, we'll try to connect you with one of our lead people, and they'll kind of walk you through the different steps. And we encourage people to try different areas at our programs to find that right fit for them. And you don't have to stay in the same area, but the retention of volunteers it can definitely be a challenge because people can sometimes feel like they're lost in the mix. And, we'd never want people to feel that way, but sometimes that's just what happens when there's so much happening, because the people who are quite experienced, they're in go mode, right? Like they know what they need to do and they're doing it. And if you're new and you're like, hey, I want to help, but I don't know where to help, and everyone's like, I'm too busy to show you, that's been the interesting journey for us as the organization leaders. Like, where do we make that connection, and how do we not let them fall through the cracks? And I think we do a fairly good job, we meet regularly on it, to be honest with you, to talk about how can we do better and make sure that we know that people know that we want them, and that we need them, and that they're seen, and that them giving of their time is valuable. And I think that's something for anyone that's running a high volume of volunteers, is just acknowledging people. It's very, very important. People aren't there for kudos. That's not what I'm saying. It's just, there's something to be said, just a thank you, and, a hello and a thank you is very important. And then we just try to, I don't know, make it fun. And what we did years ago, we really kind of put some effort, and there's some pros and cons to this, but empowering our volunteers. So AccesSurf is run by this core of people, but really we always say it's the community of everyone, and it really is. So we really value our volunteers' input, and we take direction from that. So, that comes with some long list of suggestions. But you know what? That's, even though sometimes it's like, okay, yep, got it. But really there's a lot of gems in there. And I think if people are open to that input from the individuals who are going through the experiences, it's very valuable. So that's something that I would advise, is to be really open to the input from your volunteers, and to, whenever possible, empowering and giving them an opportunity to really engage in a level that they have their own ownership. Like, this is their program as well.
I love that. Thank you. Because I know I've worked in much like smaller things with volunteers, and that is always like, yeah, that's always like a tricky thing. Like, how do you help them stay? How do you like get them involved? So thank you for sharing that. That's really about, your advice on that. Again, like, this is another like logistics question.
Oh, I love those questions.
Okay, you want to like do a program and you want to like go operate, but there's like special things to consider, right? Like permits and I guess special marketing things. So I guess specifically as a community program, what are some of those special considerations that you're like, oh, don't forget when you envision this, don't forget that you should probably, find out if this beach is allowing people to come out, or find out, like, I guess.
Yeah.
Well for you.
Well, I mean, that list is long, to be quite honest. I mean, it seems as though it's simple enough, but it's an excellent question, because there are so many pieces to the puzzle, and depending on where you are and what you're doing. And so a great example was, again, I know I keep referring to during the time when we weren't able to run programs, but it was really eye-opening, the things. So both of you are probably familiar with our, when we would go to White Plains Beach Park. And on the island of Oahu, there's this, we have certain beaches that are overseen by MWR, our military, and White Plains is one of those beaches. And that relationship evolved over years, and we're still navigating that. So that's a one-off. And why I refer to that is during when a lot of things were shut down, we as AccesSurf were trying to find different locations that we could be running programs. And here we are on this island, surrounded by beaches. You think, just go to another beach.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It's not that easy. So a few things. One, we literally, we sent kind of like a survey out amongst our volunteers and participants. And that's another thing to note. Like, when I say participants, I mean, it's just a term so people know the difference, but we're all together. Like our participants are volunteers and volunteers are, it's just, we all blend together. But anyway, we kind of asked everyone their opinion, not everyone, but several people, tell us about your local beach as far as accessibility, meaning things like, is there parking? How far is the parking lot from the beach? What's the beach like? What's the access from when you get to the beach across to the sand? Is there a bathroom? Is there a lifeguard? What's the actual conditions of the water? And then we also had staff. We took an entire day or 2 days, and we drove around to the island, around the island, and we were rating the beaches, and and trying to find out. And we were going obscure places, and we couldn't find another place that was suitable for our programs because of the size of our programs and the needs of our programs. And we're very adaptable. Like, we come with our own mats. We can come with a porta potty. I mean, we don't need to check all of the boxes because we can create those things. But it was very interesting to see the different things. So what I would recommend is find an appropriate location. Those things are things to consider, what I just mentioned. And then find out, is that wherever you live, is that a county park? Is that a state park? Is that a federal park? Who do you need to have permission? What's that process look like? Okay, great. Then you've got that. Like, for example, right now we're doing a program tomorrow in Waikiki. We need to get a specific permit for that. We had to do that 3 weeks ago. Okay, now what's the parking situation? What's that? So we have to reserve parking. It's really fascinating. All those different pieces, and then the knowing the water conditions at that park and talking, or that beach, and then finding out from the locals that are there, the different times a year, and then of course the lifeguards. And that's just finding the location. Then there's the insurances and all of those other, and the waivers and all those other things. But it's something to really think about. And then if it's missing pieces of the puzzle that you need, then how do you fill those holes? Like for us with the beach mats, for example, like getting across the sand or the grass, depending on the situation, or bringing an accessible porta potty or what have you, but those different things. But I don't know, did that kind of answer a little bit? I mean,
definitely.
I could bore you to death with logistics, but
well, yeah, I think that was a good answer to our question, just to kind of get a general idea of like the process that you, a nonprofit, goes through to put on this program. Because I think for a lot of recreational therapists are very passionate about the programs that they do and like the things that they can offer, but I don't know if we always realize all the logistics that go into putting on a program, especially one of your size, to just like, you have all these people that are really passionate about surfing. They want to like get people out there and adapt it for them. But before you can do all that, you have to have a location that's suitable. You have to consider the legality of it, like the safety of your participants. I think it's really good for people listening to this podcast just to hear like, these are things that you should think about, that are important that you'll come across, just to like make it easier for you to be able to put on whatever type of program you're trying to do.
Exactly.
So I guess my question is just, for someone who is interested in providing any sort of adaptive community recreation, what advice would you have for them just like getting started? Like if you could go back and be like, this is what you should think about. I'm sure that's like lots of things.
You mean like specifically with surfing or any kind of adaptive sports?
Really anything. Yeah, surfing, any adaptive sports.
Well, you know what I would say, and this is something that I saw a bit, but had already been sort of established. But when I came on, taking time, taking time at the beginning and finding the right location or something like that's a great piece of the puzzle. And really planning ahead of time, and you want to be careful not to go crazy with the planning, but you really do need to think about the structure. Like, where are you going to be? What is the sport going to be? What are the needs of the individuals? How do you get that equipment? And then what is the structure of the program look like? And how do you train people? And how do you get people there? I mean, I guess that would be my advice, is to, even though you are excited and you want to do it, what I would, or do a few like little like minis, like take 1 or 2 people and try to figure it out and be like, okay. And like definitely have some of those people who are willing to learn with you and, kind of develop it very slowly. Because if you open the gates, I mean, people are going to come. which is great, which is what you want, but you want it to be a great experience and you want it to be a safe experience and, all those things. So I guess I would just advise, figure out the logistics for what it is you're looking to do and then build it slowly.
I think this is a lot of what I'm taking from this conversation is the power of channeling passion into figuring out the details, because it's really cool to see how AccessSurf, you are so inspired to do all of these different programs. But as you said, you're very careful to say, is this something we can support without letting something else go? Because if not, we're not ready to do that. And that's really good to kind of like step back and say, it's okay to not do everything right now. It's okay to start where we are and acknowledge, like, this is where I'm at right now. And I have dreams and visions and we're working towards those. But I guess the power of like the little details is really coming out.
That's a perfect way to describe it, and I think when someone gets more involved with AccessSurf and then they realize the granular detail, and it might seem like ad nauseum some of our meetings, but there's just so many moving parts that it's very necessary. And then that way, but you know what though, if you take your time and you build that structure and that foundation, that's what you can build the other things from. But if you don't have that to begin with, you'll just be like, and we still talk about how we're like trying to take a drink from a fire hydrant, with AccessSurf. Like it's like, but I've watched us grow too fast, and then we had to slow down a bit. And then even now, I noticed this year, now that programs are running again, we started getting to like, oh yeah, yes. And then just the other day as staff, we're like, okay, we're going to take a step back. We're going to do a little regroup. Where is our focus? And just always having that awareness. And it's okay. Like you said, you want to do it all. And it's hard for us when someone comes to the island and they're like, we want to go surfing, but we're not here on a program day. And we take every single person out that ever contacted us. Well, we're exhausted. And then anyway, I'm rambling, but yeah.
Oh, but it's so good to hear about, just because of your years of experience, you can say, we tried that and we realized that wasn't, like, it's just really powerful.
Yes.
You're like, especially, for people who are feeling like they're in the trenches right now, I'm sure, to be able to hear like, that's normal. That's normal.
Yes. Yes.
I have to set some boundaries at some point until I can figure out how I can get around those to be able to meet all of them.
Exactly. And to sustain it, whether you're talking volunteers or staff or whatever it is, or resources. I mean, you can burn out on all of those things. And then that's, not good for anybody. So,
yeah, I really love that. So I love to hear the stories of the individuals. And so can you tell us a story about a surfer that really stands out in your memory and affirms why you're doing what you do, or a surfer or an experience or something that on the hard days reminds you like, this is why I'm here?
I feel like there's 8 million wonderful, amazing stories just like that. Exactly. Like every day there's something that pops in, to mind. But I think a really good example, and it's someone that kind of encompasses a lot of those experiences, and you may both know him, Buster. So Buster is one of our, he's kind of like our mainstays, and I know he's sort of like a signature person, but I think it's really important or powerful to share his story because, like I said, it checks a lot of boxes. So Buster is a veteran, and he started with us, I believe, with our winter wear program, but maybe it was Day at the Beach. But he has ectasia, so it's a progressive neurological. So he used to be a very accomplished waterman, or he still is, pardon me, but he was like, canoe paddler, crossing channels, like hardcore, doing all these things. And then over the years, physically, the changes in his body, he's had to change the different sports that he's been doing. And he got into surfing 8 years ago, I think it was when he started with AccessSurf. And when I hear Buster talk, or when we message each other, surfing and the community around surfing and AccessSurf specifically is what keeps him going every day, all the time. And that's his physical therapy. It's his emotional and mental therapy in that sense as well. Well-being, overall well-being. It's his community. And when I hear, Buster talk about how important that is for him, and his tagline is, the ocean is my medicine, because there is no cure for Buster. But from being in the water and being active and being engaged with his community, he's really, not everyone loves the word inspirational, but man, this guy's inspirational. Just seeing the fire that's in him to keep at a high level of athleticism, even though he's daily having physical challenges. I think, I don't know, maybe other sports would be that way, but I just think there's something very special about ocean and that community that makes you want to, I don't know, has a deeper passion. I feel like, I don't know, maybe basketball is the same way, but I don't know.
I love that.
and Buster, he's on our world's team. He's winning events. He's in a surf magazine last month. It's just like, it's unbelievable. This guy's unbelievable, and the thing about someone like Buster too, that I think is really amazing, is his willingness to share and give back. Like he messages me, Cara, are you doing okay? How you doing, Cara? I'm just like, what's going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's an incredible thing. He's, he started as a participant, but he's 100%, a community. He's a big part of our community and an ambassador for all of us. So I don't know. I just love Buster. I think he's the greatest representative.
Yeah, he is a person that I've seen every time I've volunteered. I've talked to him every single time I've gone. Like, he's a great.
I don't know if he's ever missed. He's probably been more to AccesSurf events than I have.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. That's really great.
Yeah.
So many of our listeners that we hopefully will have don't live in Hawaii, but might be interested in partnering with programs like yours that offer adaptive surfing or other adaptive water sports. Can you recommend any other adaptive surfing or adaptive water sport organizations that exist currently in the US or even nationally? Like, what are other things similar to what you guys do?
Yeah, there's a lot, and it's really wonderful and amazing to see. And I'm sure there's way more than what I'm about to mention, but these are a few that we tend to work with a lot. But Life Rolls On, Stoked for Life, AccesSurf are some really well-known ones. And then also Challenge Athlete Foundation is an organization that I would recommend. They do some surfing, but they do lots of different adaptive sports. But there's big groups and small groups all over on the mainland. It's pretty impressive to see. And honestly, although there's so many of them, it's still a small world. So you would just need to get in touch with one of those groups. And if you were in a different location, they would tell you about, so-and-so and so-and-so.
Yeah, we'll definitely link some of those organizations in our show notes so that if people listening to this podcast are like, well, I don't live in Hawaii, but like maybe they might be close to some of these other organizations.
Well, and it's around the world. I just mentioned places that are on the mainland US. There are organizations all over the world. So wherever your listeners are, there'll be an opportunity, I would imagine.
Cool. We'll find them in Singapore. I'll go find someone.
Yeah.
About it. Also, we'll also in the show notes, let's link, also we'll do like pictures of some of the boards and some of the adaptive things that you do so that people can see that.
Yeah.
Too. So if you guys are listening and you're like, what does a prone board look like? I'm with you, and we'll link it and show you so that you can see that.
I love that.
Okay, so this podcast episode will probably be coming out between September and December 2022. So are there any special events or things coming up in the next few months that I guess between those months? And if you don't have an answer to that now, we can message you when we actually publish this and like get more of like, hey, what's going on, like when we're actually publishing this. But
well, we'll still be running all of our regular programs, so our Wounded Warrior and Day at the Beach and then the clinics, but Our anniversary will be November, whatever the first Saturday of November is. So that'll be our 16th anniversary, which is exciting. And I believe it's in November, we'll be partnering with Craig Rehab Hospital and doing a multi-day surf camp. So we've been doing some of those things as well. So that's been really fun seeing that grow as well. But other than that, we're quite busy, quite busy running our regular programs.
Awesome. And so if someone wanted to find those programs, what is the best way for them to find it?
Yeah, just on our website. So it's accessurf.org, and AccesSurf is one word with only 2 S's. And then they go to our website, and then there's events calendar, and we'll have everything on there.
Perfect. And we'll also link that website in the show notes for you guys, so that you can
appreciate it. Yay.
Well, is there anything else you want to share with us, Cara, about AccesSurf, or anything that you think would be like super great for people listening to this podcast to know about that we haven't covered? I know we talked about a lot of things.
Well, not really. I just wanted to say thank you. You know, what a great opportunity, and you two are excellent. You're very good, and so I wish you all the luck with your podcast. I think you'll be very successful. You've got a great platform, and I get interviewed quite a bit, and I must tell you, your questions were really interesting and different. So good on you. You guys are asking some really cool stuff.
Well, thank you.
All right, cool, Cara. Thank you so much for your time. I know that you are incredibly busy, and I'm super excited to share what you're doing with us. So thank you so much.
Well, it was good to see you both again. It's so nice.
So fun to connect again.
All right, everyone, that's it for our episode today. Thanks for joining us as we learn more about adaptive surfing and AccesSurf. If you have any questions about this episode, feel free to shoot us an email at realtalkrectherapy@gmail.com. Have a great day. Bye.